Presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy goes viral after answering a question on LGBT issues at the Iowa State Fair. His response surprises the activist who asked him the question. The activist asked Ramaswamy what his opinion is on the LGBT community. Ramaswamy says he doesn't think it's one community. He says you can't just mash so many different kinds of people together under one term. He mentions how gay people are in conflict with transgender people. When asked her views, the activist says she is pansexual. He also says he doesn't feel it's right to have women compete against biological men in sports competition or share the same locker room with men. He also disagrees with exposing LGBT ideologies to children. At the end of the conversation, he and the activist shake hands. A congressman says Chinese hackers breached his emails. The FBI says suspected Chinese hackers were able to access his personal and campaign email accounts. Nebraska Republican Don Bacon is a vocal supporter of Taiwan and a critic of the Chinese government. In a social media post, Bacon said the hackers only got access to political strategy and fundraising information. He says the FBI told him about the breach Monday. Bacon is the first known lawmaker to fall prey to an alleged Chinese espionage campaign. Traumatized Maui residents have grown weary from living off relief supplies. That's a week after wildfires ravaged the resort town of Lahaina. Many are kept from inspecting their homes and are left waiting for news from missing loved ones.
This charred rubble is all that remains of taxi driver Kayat Ma and his wife Daisy Lou's home. It's been 1 week since a wildfire ravaged their resort town of Lahaina on Maui Island, killing at least 100 people and leaving a trail of destruction.
I get a chance to come back.
Ma was one of the few able to return to his home to assess the damage.
It not just me lost everything, but everybody. Everything's gone.
The couple are now staying indefinitely with family on the outskirts of Lahaina. Like many others, they are traumatized by what has happened and what they've lost. They're also facing the prospect of precious tourist dollars evaporating. The couple have been driving private taxis on the island for 20 years, putting everything into their house, and now it's all gone.
Because so many years we put all hard working that we have in that house, everything. We have no chance to take anything out. There's no warning, no nothing, and we on the road working, But thank God I have my husband and I still survive,
Other Maui residents have grown weary from living off relief supplies.
No he podido dormir.
This woman, who fled the fire with her daughter, says she's been barely able to eat or sleep in the days since the fires. Adding to the local frustration, few residents have been permitted back into Lahaina to visit their properties. Many are still waiting for news about their missing loved ones. The fire destroyed or damaged more than 2,200 buildings, most of them residential, and according to officials, caused an estimated $5.5 billion in damage. President Joe Biden has said he would like to visit Maui as soon as possible.
Welcome back. Should social media companies be allowed to ban users for political content? Texas and Florida say no, but the Solicitor General is asking the Supreme Court to step in. The laws in Texas and Florida prohibit social media companies from banning users based on political viewpoints. As such, they restrict the ability of platforms like Facebook, X, and YouTube to moderate content, even if such content violates the terms and conditions of the platform. Courts have been divided over the matter. In January, the Supreme Court postponed a decision on whether it would hear the cases, asking the U.S. Solicitor General to weigh in. The Solicitor General stated that confiscating decisions from circuit courts warrant a review by the Supreme Court. The High Court could decide on whether to hear the lawsuits as soon as next month. Jeffrey Tucker, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Jeffrey, homelessness in America is up by 11% since last year. You attribute this to pandemic-era lockdown measures. Explain that for us.
this really is a burgeoning crisis. We've never seen homelessness increase like this. And this estimate, by the way, excludes the refugee problems developing in New York City and all over Massachusetts. But the estimates are that we have 557,000 people who are homeless. And in trying to think through this, of course, you've got lots of problems associated with substance abuse, inflation, professional displacement all over the country. But there is a pandemic measure that I think has played into this, and it was the rental moratorium. Now, that began in March and was extended by the CDC and ultimately invalidated by the Supreme Court. But what it did is it caused people who are landlords to really tighten credit standards for signing a lease. And it turns out that many people can't get through them. This includes even people in the middle class. So the homelessness problem is affecting a wide swath of the population now.
And you also claim the nation's shortage of affordable housing is due to government interventions. Explain this for us.
Oh, sure. I mean, not many people are real estate developers, but if you get into that business, it's overwhelming how much the paperwork is and getting through the zoning laws and the environmental controls and just buying property, getting approval by the city council. It's incredible what it takes just to get through all those barriers. And by the time you get through them, your costs are so high that there's no way that you could just create affordable housing. You have to create luxury living, and in some places in this country that means rents from $5,000 to $10,000 a month, like in New York City. These converted office buildings that are becoming residences are only for the extremely well-to-do, and it's cutting off an entire slice of the population that needs housing right now. It's becoming a serious crisis that everyone is vulnerable to.
Jeffrey, how do you think the pandemic should have been handled, given all this?
Well, without attacking freedom and human rights above all else, I mean, it's kind of extraordinary to think that we had a government edict coming from Washington that told landlords all over the country, coast to coast, that they are no longer in a position to enforce rental payments and that they cannot evict people. It was a kind of legalization of squatting in this country. That's really took place. The consequences of that are that people are just terrified of anybody trying to rent property from them. That's why the credit standards have tightened so much. A lot of people cannot qualify, and what happens then? Well, the only option is to sleep in your car, or that lands you in the street. So the spiral down is very, very quick, and that, I think, is what's happening in this country, and it's tragic. It's something that a prosperous nation should never have tolerated. We shouldn't have done any of these things. You asked how should have handled it? We should have treated the sick. I mean, that's with ways we knew to treat the sick, which is mostly with repurposed drugs. But instead, we destroyed human liberty, locked everybody down, and we're facing the consequences of that today.
All right, Jeffrey Tucker, author of Liberty or Lockdown, thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
Partisan agreement on fentanyl. A handful of U.S. senators want to increase access to testing strips to prevent overdose deaths. Their new bill would decriminalize using the testing strips. The testing strips are currently classified as drug paraphernalia. The bill was authored by Senator John Cornyn of Texas. His state has seen a significant increase in fentanyl-related deaths in recent years. He said in a press release that poisonings among children and teenagers have skyrocketed given the rise in fake prescription pills containing fentanyl. At the state level, Texas lawmakers unanimously passed a bill to decriminalize fentanyl testing strips, but this measure never made it to the governor's desk to become law. U.S. Senator Tom Cotton says this new nationwide bill would, quote, help prevent overdose by people who didn't realize fentanyl was in the drugs they took. In 2018, Rhode Island became the first state to formally decriminalize the testing strips. At least 20 other states have followed the move. Thanks for staying with us. Social Security could be worth $17,400 less in a decade. A recent analysis study how much the average retired couple is likely to receive in benefits. The Social Security program is funded by the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund. Trustees predict that reserves will be depleted by 2033. That's according to a post by the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. The group says everyone will see their benefits cut by 23%. The committee pointed out that poverty among low-income couples could rise significantly once the money is depleted. The committee says 2024 presidential candidates are facing pressure to pledge not to touch Social Security in order to protect recipients' benefits. But the group says not touching it would also be harmful since it would simply deplete without action.